A dog waits at a doorway. No one told it to stay. No one promised its owner would return. Yet it waits anyway. We call this loyalty. We have called it that for so long, we stopped asking what it actually is. We thought we understood this animal completely. Yet we were wrong far more often than we ever expected.
Somewhere between an ice age and a doorstep, something happened between two species that neither one can explain to us in words. So we are left to read the evidence ourselves, in frozen mud, in ancient bone, in strands of DNA. That same DNA sat unexamined for generations, its secrets waiting until scientists finally thought to look, only recently. Have we, perhaps, spent centuries mistaking simple dependence for something we call devotion? Tonight, we go looking for the difference. A dog watches its owner's face, waiting for the smallest signal, a tone, a glance, a shift in posture. We look at that and see something familiar, something like ourselves. It is tempting to stop right there.
But scientists studying this behavior found themselves circling a stranger word than loyalty. They called it hypersociability, an almost compulsive pull toward human company, wired deep into the biology of the animal. That word does not answer whether a dog feels love. It answers something else entirely. That something deep in this animal's evolutionary past was quietly rebuilt to need us. And once you accept that idea, a harder question quickly follows close behind. Have we mistaken dependence for devotion? To find out, we cannot begin with the dog waiting at the doorstep. We have to go back. Back to the last place on Earth anyone would ever have expected such a friendship to begin at all. Imagine a frozen valley where the wind carries no scent of food and the temperature sits far below freezing. Two predators stop, some distance apart. One walks on two legs, the other in packs on four. Neither attacks, neither runs. For a few long, silent seconds, in a world built entirely on competition, history itself holds its breath. Every rule of survival says these two species should never have shared a meal, let alone a fire. And yet, somewhere in that stillness, something shifted. One leading explanation, known as the self-domestication model, suggests it was not the boldest wolves who survived that first encounter, but the calmest. These were the wolves willing to linger at the edge of a human camp, scavenging what others were too aggressive or too afraid to risk. Generation after generation, that calmness paid off, and their instinct to flee slowly began to fade. No human in this telling ever chose them. They may have chosen us, though it remains only a leading hypothesis among researchers studying this distant period of history. Other researchers argue humans took a more deliberate hand, much earlier than this model allows. The debate is far from settled. But if even part of it is true, it leaves us with a question that refuses to sit still. Can trust, of all things, evolve somewhere in the wild long before love ever exists between two species? Thousands of years later, archaeologists would find proof that something had already changed, proof buried in a grave near Bonn, Germany. They uncovered the remains of a small canine laid to rest beside two humans, deliberately, carefully, more than 14,000 years ago. Not discarded, not left as waste, buried as family. Trust, it seems, was real. But trust alone cannot explain what happened next. Somewhere inside a strand of DNA, 500 million base pairs long, sits an answer no one thought to search for. For decades, the story of the dog's friendliness lived only in what we could see with our own eyes. The way a puppy runs eagerly toward a stranger, something a wolf pup would almost never do at all. Then geneticists finally stopped watching the behavior alone and started reading the genetic code beneath it entirely.
Hidden on chromosome 6 was a change that may have made dogs unusually drawn to human company itself. Small genetic insertions were found sitting on a cluster of genes linked in humans to Williams-Buren syndrome itself, a rare condition marked by extreme sociability and an almost boundless trust in complete strangers around them.
It is a striking echo, but scientists remain careful here. This is not proof that one single mutation builds a personality. Behavior this complex and layered is rarely, if ever, written by just one single gene alone. Other researchers point to a second suspect, MC2R, a gene tied to cortisol, the body's own stress hormone. They propose that early dogs may simply have felt calmer around humans than their wilder relatives ever did. For now, it remains an open and unfinished thread of research, not yet a settled verdict. Even unfinished, the implication is hard to shake. Some part of a dog's affection for us may not be trained at all. It may already be written into the animal itself, long before the puppy's eyes ever open. If loyalty can be written into DNA, how much of it is really a choice? But genes can't explain what the brain feels. Picture a dog lying inside a machine meant to read minds, awake, unrestrained, perfectly still, not from fear, but from trust. For most of human history, this scene was simply impossible. The dog couldn't describe what it felt, and we had no way to look. Neuroscientist Gregory Burns built a way to look anyway, training dogs to hold perfectly still inside an MRI scanner. He then passed different scents beneath their noses, strangers, other dogs, unfamiliar people, and finally, their own owner's scent. One region of the brain answered instantly: the caudate nucleus, a core piece of the brain's reward circuitry, lighting up at the presence of someone familiar. In many dogs, that response rivaled and sometimes even surpassed the response to food itself. For some, a kind word could outweigh a treat. It is tempting to call this the proof we've been searching for all along. Scientists resist that very temptation. A scan can show us activity. It cannot show us experience. We can watch a reward center fire, but still cannot feel what the dog feels. If a brain lights up, does that truly prove love? Yet behavior still tells a very different story. Line them up side by side, a wolf and a dog that descended from it, and look closely at their genes. Their genetic code is almost indistinguishable, more than 99% identical between these two very different animals. And yet, give them the same problem, and something splits them instantly apart. Researchers built a test with no real solution, a puzzle box, deliberately impossible to open, and placed first a wolf in front of it, and then a dog. The wolf worked, pawed, circled, tried again and again, relying entirely on itself, long after most dogs beside it had already stopped. The dogs, more often than not, gave up within moments and turned instead toward the nearest human, watching, waiting, as if the answer might be found somewhere in a face, rather than inside the box itself. One of them kept searching the box. The other looked up and searched a human face instead, without hesitation. This is not, in truth, a story about intelligence. In many independent problem-solving tasks, wolves consistently outperform dogs. What changed is something quieter, simply where an animal turns to look once it runs out of its own answers. Some researchers describe dogs as cognitive followers, built not to solve the world alone, but to lean on us instead. It is a trade dogs seem to have made without ever being asked. Did wolves lose something along the way? Or did dogs perhaps gain something instead? Something no wolf pack out in the wild ever truly needed? Unless, all along, we have simply misunderstood dogs completely, From the very beginning of this entire story, for decades, we were told there was only one way to live with a dog: be the alpha, dominate or be dominated. It made for a genuinely compelling story. It was also, it turns out, largely and simply a mistake. That theory traced back to wolves living in captivity, strangers to one another, forced together, fighting for rank. It described an artificial group of wolves that would never truly exist out in the wild at all.
Even the researcher most associated with popularizing the idea eventually worked hard, in later years, to unwind it himself. Field studies of wild wolf packs revealed something far gentler: cooperative families, led not by conquest, but by parents raising their young. And that famous guilty look of theirs, the lowered head, the eyes that simply won't meet your own, the very look every owner swears means their dog knows exactly what it did wrong just moments before. Research suggests it is something else entirely, a response to our own tone and posture, appearing whether or not the dog did anything at all. In both cases, we were never really watching the dog. We were watching a story we had already decided to believe. How many of these stories have we kept, not because the evidence demanded it, but because we simply wanted them to be true? That question doesn't stay confined to dog behavior. It follows us straight into the one question we have circled since the very first frame. Every dog owner arrives here eventually, in some quiet moment, asking, does my dog actually, truly love me? A dog looks into its owner's eyes. Neither speaks. Yet inside both brains, at the same moment, the same hormone begins to rise. Scientists call it the oxytocin gaze loop. Oxytocin, the hormone tied to bonding, climbing in both species at once. This has appeared in study after study. A closed loop of connection, rare between two entirely different animals. It felt for a moment like the missing piece. But other researchers, testing the same claim under closer scrutiny, have raised real concerns. They question how consistently this loop actually appears, and how far the original findings can be trusted to generalize. So even here, at what should be the emotional center of this story, science refuses to hand us a clean answer. And maybe that refusal is the most honest thing this investigation has to offer. Perhaps the greatest mystery was never the dog. Perhaps it was us, and why we need so badly to believe that loyalty truly is love. We still do not know with full certainty whether a dog experiences love the same way we do. What we know is this. Across thousands of years, in the space between a wolf and a doorway, two species built something that exists nowhere else in nature. Out of scavenged scraps, quiet trust, and unplanned mutations. Perhaps loyalty was never truly a promise, and perhaps it was never, strictly speaking, love at all. Perhaps it was only the greatest evolutionary strategy two species ever built together, one that looks, from where we stand, indistinguishable from love. Perhaps loyalty was never the gift the dog gave us. Perhaps it was the question it left behind.